There are some names that, the moment you hear them, a single image immediately comes to mind. For example, when we hear Pythagoras, most of us instantly picture that right triangle, right? You know, the famous one. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, for example. A formula we memorized back in school, one that some of us loved, while for others, just hearing its name was enough to make them feel uneasy. But what if I told you that the man behind this formula was also a mysterious cult leader who claimed to have unlocked the secrets of the universe through numbers, forbade his followers from eating beans, and believed in the immortality of souls, even in their reincarnation into animal bodies? Yes, I'm talking about the same man. How can a mathematical genius also become such a mysterious, such a contradictory figure? This question has been occupying my mind for weeks. Atlas, what do you think about this? How do these two sides of Pythagoras come together? Who was this man really?
You've hit on one of the most crucial questions right at its core. Pythagoras is truly one of the most fascinating and complex figures in the history of Western thought. And yes, he was a mathematical genius, but at the same time he was much more than that. Listening to his story will offer us not only an old theorem, but also a chance to better understand the foundations of modern thought, and perhaps even the way we ourselves are curious.
That's exactly why I'm so curious about this. So, what will this man's story bring to us? Are we just going to say, wow, that's interesting, and move on? Or will we actually find something that still touches our lives today?
Definitely the latter, because Pythagoras' ideas have influenced so many things, even if we're not aware of it, from the way we understand music, to the notion that the universe has an order, and even to the very word philosophy that we use. In this episode, we'll explore how this enigmatic man searched for the bigger picture behind numbers, how he wove a web of mystery around himself, and how he shaped our modern world. If you're ready, let's open the doors to this ancient labyrinth.
I'm ready as ever. But please, let's not forget about that bean issue. It's really stuck in my mind.
We won't forget, I promise. It's actually one of the most colorful and hotly debated pieces of the Pythagoras puzzle. But first, let's go back to the very beginning. Who was this Pythagoras? Where was he born? What kind of era did he live in?
Yes, it's important to picture that era in our minds. What kind of world was it that such extraordinary ideas and such complex characters could emerge?
It is believed that he was born around 570 BC on the island of Samos, surrounded by the sparkling waters of the Aegean. At that time, Samos was a bustling trade port. It was a meeting point for different cultures, merchants, travelers, and therefore new ideas. It is said that in his youth, Pythagoras traveled to Egypt, Babylon, and perhaps even as far as India, where he encountered ancient wisdom and mysterious teachings.
So was he like a kind of Marco Polo of the ancient world? An explorer constantly in pursuit of new knowledge. So what do we know for certain about him? Or rather, how much do we not know? Why is it that there are so many legends about such an important man?
This is the most interesting part of the job and what makes it so mysterious. The things we know for sure about him firsthand are surprisingly few. Not a single text that we can be sure was written by his own hand has survived to this day. We know him mostly through the writings and accounts of his students and philosophers like Plato, who were influenced by him after his death. Naturally, this creates a great shroud of legend and mystery around him.
So, in a way, the portrait of Pythagoras we have is shaped somewhat by hearsay and legends. In fact, this makes him even more intriguing. So what did this mysterious man do next? Where did he go after Samos?
He migrates to the city of Croton in southern Italy, where he would spend a significant part of his life and make his greatest impact, and there he establishes the famous school that would bear his name, or more accurately, a kind of philosophical and religious brotherhood. This is the place where the legend and influence of Pythagoras reach their peak.
A school? That sounds a bit more complicated and maybe even a little unsettling. So, did they only teach mathematics there, or was there more to it? You mentioned mysterious cult leader at the beginning.
Much more than that, Marina. It wasn't just an educational institution, it was practically a way of life. Alongside intellectual pursuits like philosophy, mathematics, music, and astronomy, there were also very strict moral rules, oaths of secrecy, rituals for living arrangements, a shared life. In short, you could call it a complete commune lifestyle.
A commune lifestyle? So, did they share everything? And with all these rules, what kind of rules were they? Now I'm even more curious. Was that famous bean prohibition actually one of the rules of this school?
Yes, that was one of them too. Be patient, we'll get to all of them one by one. But first, let's focus on the central concept that forms the foundation of his worldview and his school: numbers. Remember, at the very beginning, you asked how a mathematical genius could turn into such a mysterious figure. Well, part of the answer lies hidden in the extraordinary meaning he attributed to numbers. For Pythagoras, numbers were not just symbols indicating quantities we use in daily life. They were the fundamental building blocks of the universe, sacred entities, the keys to a divine order.
Sacred entities? So when we say 1, 2, 3, are we actually talking about gods, angels, and such? This is a bit too abstract for me, Atlas. For me, one still just means one apple.
Your apple is also a part of that grand order, Marina. But for Pythagoras, one was the symbol of unity, wholeness, the source of everything. 2 represented opposites, duality. 3 stood for harmony and completeness. 4 symbolized justice and stability. Especially the number 10, which is the sum of these first 4 numbers, known as the tetractys, was the most sacred, the most perfect number for them. So much so that they would even swear their most important oaths on the tetractys.
Wow. So behind the numbers we know, there was an entire universe of philosophy. So what did he do with these numbers? Okay, the philosophy is very deep and impressive, but did it have any practical applications? For example, aside from that famous right triangle theorem of his, did he find anything with these numbers that touches daily life? Anything practical?
Absolutely. The most well-known and perhaps the most striking is the discovery of harmony, that is, the order in music. According to legend, one day, while passing by a blacksmith's shop, he noticed the harmony between the sounds produced by hammers of different weights striking the anvil. Curious, he shut himself in his workshop and through experiments discovered that the harmony between sounds was based on simple mathematical ratios between the lengths of strings or the weights of the hammers.
So, when we talk about do, re, mi, and so on, are we actually doing math without even realizing it? Are the beautiful melodies in the music we listen to today also actually based on the ratios discovered by Pythagoras? That's incredible.
Exactly. This discovery was one of the most tangible and audible pieces of evidence that beneath many things in the universe that seem random, there is actually an underlying order, and that this order can be understood by the human mind, especially through mathematics. This not only shaped the history of music, but also became one of the cornerstones of Western philosophy of science. The sound produced by a simple string opened the door to a way of understanding the world that would fundamentally change our perspective. This is the first great achievement that Pythagoras offered us, the hope that the universe is not just a chaotic place, but rather has a comprehensible language, a music.
This is truly impressive and thought-provoking, Atlas. So, in that famous school, they weren't just making students memorize abstract formulas, they were searching for mathematics in every aspect of life. But in a school with such profound ideas and such great discoveries, why were there so many strange and unusual rules? Shall we go back now to that mysterious brotherhood you mentioned earlier, and its rules? Especially that bean issue I'm obsessed with.
We're one step closer to the beans, don't worry. Yes, the Pythagorean school was not just an educational institution. Its members lived together, shared the knowledge and even the property they acquired, and lived with a very strict sense of discipline and morality. And they were also vegetarians.
Vegetarians? That must have been very unusual at the time. Why is that? Was it just a health choice, or did it have a deeper meaning?
It had a much deeper meaning. Their vegetarianism was directly connected to their belief in the transmigration of souls, which we'll discuss in more detail shortly. Not harming animals, not eating them, was an important part of the process of spiritual purification and becoming one with universal harmony. And of course, there was that famous vow of silence, one of the most talked about rules of the school.
A vow of silence? How long did that last? If I had to stay quiet for even an hour, I think I'd start talking to myself in my head.
For newcomers, this period could last up to 5 years, Marina. For 5 years, you would only listen, accept without questioning, and not speak. But those who successfully completed this challenging period were accepted among the mathematikoi, that is, the knowers or learners, and earned the right to learn Pythagoras' true, profound teachings.
5 years. It's unbelievable. I bet half the school would say, I'm out of here, and run away in the first month. Or they were definitely whispering to each other in secret. So why such a long and strict silence? What was their purpose with this?
The main goal was to cultivate inner discipline, to tame the ego, to teach avoiding hasty judgments, and most importantly, to truly learn how to listen. It was to clear the mind of unnecessary talk and thoughts, and to prepare it for deep philosophical truths, and to hear the silent music of the universe. Perhaps Pythagoras believed that in order to attain true wisdom, we must first silence the noise within ourselves. This also offers us another important insight, that sometimes to reach true understanding and wisdom, we need to pause and be silent, listen patiently, and embark on an inner journey.
That's a truly profound philosophy. But still, about those beans, Atlas, please, let's finally get to that topic. Why were beans forbidden? In a school so important, with such deep ideas and such great sacrifices, why would an ordinary vegetable, a simple legume, be banned? Or did they have some kind of problem with a secret bean lobby or something?
And now we've come to one of the most colorful, most puzzling, and most entertaining mysteries of the Pythagoras legend. The bean ban. And yes, Marina, the exact reason for this ban is still completely shrouded in mystery. But there are so many theories about it, and each one is so interesting that they could each be a topic of conversation on their own.
Theories? Awesome. Tell me right away. I'm dying of curiosity.
Calm down, Marina. According to one theory, there was a purely practical reason for this. At that time, a genetic type of anemia called favism, which is especially triggered by fava beans and certain types of beans, was quite common in the Mediterranean region. Maybe this was a collective health precaution. According to another view, the empty spaces inside the beans were associated with superstitions, such as causing bloating and gas, which could make the soul escape from the body more easily or attract evil spirits and energies.
So, after all that deep philosophy, are we going to conclude that they banned it just because it causes gas? That would be a bit disappointing, but it's definitely funny. But isn't there a more philosophical, more symbolic explanation for this?
Of course there is. One of the most striking theories is that beans were considered living and sacred because their shape resembles a human embryo, or, according to some ancient beliefs, sexual organs, and therefore eating them could be seen as a kind of disrespect or even cannibalism. Some even go further, claiming that because the Pythagoreans believed in that famous transmigration of souls, they thought a person's soul could be reborn as a bean in the next life. Just imagine, maybe your late great-uncle comes back in his next life as a plate of kidney beans on your dinner table.
Oh, Atlas. That's honestly chilling, but at the same time, it's so absurd. So, does that mean when I eat a plate of beans, I might actually be eating an ancient philosopher or some relative I never knew? My appetite just vanished all of a sudden. But I have to admit, it's incredibly intriguing. The fact that there's no definite answer just makes the mystery even more appealing.
Absolutely. And this shows us once again that, for Pythagoras, the world was not just about what could be seen with the naked eye, or about numbers and formulas. Everything, even something as simple as a single bean, had a symbolic meaning and a hidden connection to the universe. This perspective proves that he was not only a rationalist and mathematician, but also a profound mystic, a reader of symbols. That is exactly what makes him so difficult to understand, and at the same time, one of the main reasons he has remained so fascinating throughout the ages.
Yes, that's truly a very important point. Mathematics and mysticism, two concepts we normally wouldn't think of together. So what exactly is this matter of transmigration of souls? You just mentioned that it's directly connected to their being vegetarians.
Yes, this doctrine, also known as metempsychosis, lies at the very heart of Pythagorean philosophy. Pythagoras believed that the soul is immortal and, after death, it transmigrates from body to body, not just into another human, but also into the body of an animal or even a plant. Because of this endless and continuous cycle of rebirth, harming or eating animals could quite possibly mean hurting, or even disrespecting, a soul that was once human in a previous life, perhaps even someone you once knew, in the grand cycle of existence.
So, in my next life, could I come back as my favorite cat, or could it be the other way around and my cat take my place? That's really a dizzying and somewhat unsettling idea. Isn't there any way to escape this cycle? Are we just going to keep going from one body to another forever?
According to Pythagoras, there was a way to break free from this cycle. The goal was to free the soul from this cycle of rebirth, or samsara, by living a philosophical life, behaving virtuously, and attaining wisdom and inner purification. This was also the main purpose behind the school he founded and its seemingly strict rules. To purify the soul and bring it closer to the divine, pure, and perfect realm to which it truly belongs.
I see. So mathematics, music, philosophy, vegetarianism, the vow of silence. All of these were actually different tools and stages of this great spiritual journey, this effort toward purification. So how did such an influential and extraordinary school, with such deep and unique ideas, come to an end? Or how did its ideas manage to reach us today? It seems it hasn't been lost in the dusty pages of history.
Unfortunately, like every powerful and unique movement, Pythagoras' school also gained political enemies over time. The increasing political influence of Pythagoras and his followers in the city of Croton began to seriously disturb certain groups. It is said that a popular uprising broke out, the school was set on fire, and many Pythagoreans were killed in these attacks. There are also different accounts about Pythagoras himself. Some say he died during these events, while others claim he managed to escape at the last moment and died elsewhere in sorrow. But as you said, his ideas never disappeared.
What do you mean? The school was destroyed, the leader was dead or exiled? How could the ideas survive such a great devastation and make it all the way to us?
Thanks to his students and later great thinkers who were influenced by those ideas, Marina, especially Plato, who represents one of the pinnacles of ancient Greek philosophy, was deeply influenced by Pythagorean thought, particularly on topics such as the immortality of the soul and the relationship between numbers and the ideal forms of the universe. Plato reinterpreted and developed these ideas within his own philosophy, passing them on to subsequent generations. In fact, it is said that the very first person to use and define himself with the word philosopher, meaning lover of wisdom, was Pythagoras himself. Just think about it, the very person who gave philosophy its name. And that is one of his greatest and most enduring legacies. The love of pursuing knowledge and wisdom, the spirit of inquiry, and the effort to understand the universe.
That's truly incredible, Atlas. So, the a squared plus b squared equals c squared formula you see as a boring equation in textbooks was actually just the beginning. Behind it lies a grand design of the universe, a philosophy of life, a mysterious brotherhood, and an immense influence that has reached all the way to our present day. I think I've now received a very clear answer to the question I asked at the very beginning, what this story will bring to us. From now on, I will definitely look at numbers, music, the order of the universe, and even a plate of beans with a completely different perspective.
I'm very glad to hear that, Marina. Above all, Pythagoras' complex and multifaceted story reminds us how valuable and exciting it is to be curious, to question, and to always seek the deeper meanings and hidden connections behind what is visible. And perhaps in his famous saying, "Everything is number," there are deeper, more holistic secrets of the universe hidden, secrets that even modern science has yet to fully unravel. Who knows? Maybe in our next conversation we'll dig into some of those mysteries that modern science still can't solve. What do you say, our esteemed listeners? What do you think? Which aspect of Pythagoras surprised you the most? Which one made you think the most? Or maybe you have your own interesting theories about beans. Please share them with us in the comments. Yes, we're genuinely curious about your comments and thoughts. Thank you again for this enjoyable and profound conversation, Marina.
No, thank you, Atlas. Thanks to you, it was another journey that opened my mind and broadened my horizons. See you in the next topic.